Okay, everybody, when we start down this road of trading, there is a lot of things that gets thrown at us. What market we're going to be trading, what are the charting packages we're going to be using, what's the strategy, what are the tools, what are the indicators, what's the time frame that we're going to be using. The list really goes on, and potentially for the first several weeks or several months in our trading, things are just all over the place. But then we get to this place of starting to get focus. What exactly it is that we're doing, how we're approaching the market, and then very quickly, almost overnight, trading becomes this game of inches. And it's very easy to confuse this, to feel like you might be miles away from making it as a trader. Maybe you're coming off of a session where you just overtraded and you did a lot of damage. Maybe you're coming off of another trade where you hit a very small profit out of fear and then you missed the huge move. Or maybe just a day where one bad trade blew everything up and you feel like you are very far away from your goals. But the reality is that you might be missing it by actual inches. And at a certain point, our trading, this becomes just a game of inches. And we don't want to ever forget that trading is a performance sport. And just like every performance sport, you could take, as a simple example, let's use golf. When you learn the game of golf, there's a lot of things you have to nail down initially. How you're standing, how you're holding the club, how to control your backswing, how to accelerate when you're driving. And once you learn all of these things, as you golf, the difference between you teeing off and ending up in the woods somewhere, or you ending up straight down the middle in the fairway, it's inches. It's the decision of opening that face a little too much or closing it a little too much. And there's a lot of traders, and I would even say most traders, that feel like they're spending most of the time in the woods in their trading and they hardly ever see the fairway and it seems like a distant memory of just being able to get in the middle. You might be missing out and missing your trading goals by some very small tweaks. Now, this isn't everybody. There's some of you old rascals out there that are very far away, not to get this confused. This will be a topic for a different video, but you're not close. You might be in a position where you're trying to play baseball out in a soccer field. You're really just lost in the sauce. But for most of us and for most people, as you're going down this road of trading, there's a lot of things you're picking up. There's a lot of things you're learning. There's a lot of progress being made. But it's just these inches that are separating everything. So let me take some time and tell you a personal story. And we can go back to the days of innocence, back when old Corby was just a young, impressionable trader. And I was at this very specific point where I was not able to put in a $400 session, one day putting in $400. And I was in this position where multiple times I would get to this over $200 mark, over $300 mark, but I just couldn't ever break this $400 day. And I was using plenty enough size where this was possible. The market had way more than enough movement to make this possible, but it just wasn't happening. And I struggled with this for a very long time, and I was missing it by an inch. And it's very common to struggle with these inches for very long periods because it's difficult. It's difficult to just be aware and to be honest with ourselves about what is actually going on. And I'm sure if somebody was looking at the outside, it would be very obvious what was going on. And I'm sure if I was looking at somebody else's trading, it would be very obvious what was going on. Now, my situation and my inch, if you will, was just cutting winners short. And I was constantly in this situation, or every time I should say, I was in this situation where maybe the day was favorable enough that I could have crushed that $400 number. I would be up slightly, and then I wouldn't be able to get back into the market. I would have this very small gain, and then I would be paralyzed trying to get back into it. Or if I was ever in a single trade that could have pushed me through and just crushed that, I would, out of fear, cut that thing short. And I was constantly in this position where the situation should be that I'm breaking a $400 day, but I was just never letting it happen. And being aware of this and finally being able to just have the awareness of what was going on here, again, it was incredibly simple solution. Yeah, I can't crack a $400 day because every time that situation is there, I get in the way and I stop it from happening. And going through a process of just realizing this was going on, and when those conditions are being favorable, getting the bravery to get back in. And when I'm in a trade that I want to just lock in those profits, stopping myself and being more patient and letting that trade work out, conquering that inch, if you will. Yeah. So let me talk about some very popular inches. So in your trading, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to some, maybe all of these. And let's talk a little bit about, tactically what we can do with this, mentally what's going on with some of this, at least is the way that I understand it and the way that I've dealt with these things. And then we'll talk a little bit about the importance of how to identify these inches in your trading to make sure that we're not letting an overwhelming situation or one-off things build these mountains in our mind about how far we've fallen or how far away we are from our goals, and creating this hell in our minds that just isn't real. The reality is a lot of the things that are really holding us back, they are incredibly simple. It's just a matter of being able to identify these, being able to understand them, and then making those incremental improvements. So let's talk about some popular inches. We can start off with the one I just mentioned, cutting winners short. And this might be you. This might be a very, as I'm talking, you might be saying, Korbs, you're preaching to the choir here. This is my thing. I'm constantly doing this. And a lot of times, if you find yourself just cutting your winners short consistently, on a strategic or let's say a tactical side of things, you probably are just lacking confidence that your system is working. And you haven't either used the system long enough, taken those trades enough times, seen those trades fail, seen those trades play out, seen the different market conditions that shape up when those trades surfaces, to just feel confident in the fact that you're in this trade, there's an edge there, you just need to let it work, and the most likely thing is that it gets to your target. And this just has to come with time, and has to come with making sure that you're, not system hopping around, and that you're staying dialed into something that works, and you can just keep trading and exploiting those edges and see yourself those work out time and time again. From a mental side of things, a lot of times what's happening here is some type of a very strong limiting belief around money, or just an attachment to being right in general. And around this idea of maybe just a limiting belief around what exactly it is that you're capable of making, or the amount of money that you're letting yourself make. If you have that limiting belief, you're in a very real sense just in these favorable situations where you just kind of get in there and self-sabotage and hold yourself back. And on the other side of it, if you have this idea of, very strong attachments to being right, then when a trade is barely working out, all you have to do is close it in and you get to be right. And you don't have to face that idea that maybe this trade's going to turn around on you and maybe you're going to be wrong. Okay, these are some very common mental things that I've had to deal with, and I've had to think about, and I've had to figure out why these things are happening. And these cause me, and this causes a lot of people to just cut winners short. On another popular inch that potentially is a thing that's holding you back right now would be just failing to take your profits. Having trades that are working out and there's a lot of open P&L, but instead of locking those in, you overstay your welcome, and then those trades just roll back on you. And maybe through the process of rolling back on you, you just give back all that open P&L, or maybe through the process of having all that roll back on you, you just keep holding it, and it ends up turning into a very big loss. We could say on maybe a strategic side or tactically, there's probably no confidence in the skill that you have to be able to repeat that winning trade. And you haven't traded long enough, or at least you don't have the confidence in yourself that you could just take this profit and then you can do it again. And by having that lack of confidence in yourself, it puts you in a position where every trade that you're in that's working out, it needs to be something special. It needs to be a home run. But let's say from a mental side of things, there's probably just a general, approaching the world or approaching the mindset with just an idea of lack, that you are, again, maybe approaching the world this way, approaching your trading this way, where you don't have enough resources, you just don't have enough. And again, you need this thing to just be that one-off, to be that home run, to fix a lot of your ailments. And it causes you to not be satisfied with just being able to lock these things in, to take your profits, to have that confidence in knowing that you can do this thing again. Another common inch would be risk parameters. We can just say this in general. There's probably not too much that really needs to be said about this, but a lot of times there's progress that can be made in your trading, and you can be doing a lot of things very right, but you never really developed and you never really had a risk plan that you can stick to and that's effective. And because of that, you do a lot of things right, but not getting that risk control and not understanding the risk parameters correctly, it just causes you to have these one-off times where you position yourself way too aggressively, and it all just, it does some serious damage, or you end up just having big swings that happen with maybe unrealized gains, excuse me, and things like this. Again, probably not too much that needs to be uncovered or dove into there, but if you can recognize that this is something that's happening and you never really had a strong risk plan, or something that you've developed and that you can stick to, this would obviously be something that's holding you back. Yeah. Let's go through a couple more of these. Over trading. The idea that you're on the screens and you're just putting on way too many trades. Probably a couple ways that this can surface that would be the most popular. First and foremost would just be something to do with patience, a lack of being able to have patience. And then particularly, sometimes over trading really happens and the trigger is after you've been up and you start taking losses. So potentially you've had a good morning, you've locked in some good profits, and then if you start getting some of that back, this triggers into a lot of just over trading. So in general, it's not a patience problem, but it's a very specific thing that sets this off. This has been an observation of mine that is very common. And over trading in maybe a general sense, that something that can't, I don't know, be fixed is the fact that you don't really want to be a trader. You just want to be a gambler. You just want to be caught up in the euphoria of what's going to happen next and that dopamine rush of getting into a trade and every single tick wondering what's going to happen. This is a difficult thing to fix, and I'm not sure what to say about that other than you might want to find something else to do with your time because this is not going to pan out very well for you. But if you are over trading, let's say because of just a lack of patience, having a hard time just being patient and letting things set up, there's a good chance that strategically, let's say, you could just zoom out a little bit. Potentially whatever time frame you're using is causing you to just see way too much information. You're seeing way too much granular detail. And if you just zoom that chart out a little bit, it'll clear things up. You'll be able to see things, not so much information coming at you at one time. And this can really help with the idea of just letting stuff set up and be patient. Another thing you can do is just limit the amount of indicators. So same thing with seeing too much information. Maybe you're too drilled into the time frame, but potentially also you just have too many things on your chart. And with these things, you're just seeing too much information, too many potential things that you could be doing, and you're not able to filter out the good from the great, or even the good from the bad in some cases. And so by getting serious, eliminating some of the indicators that you're using, not falling into this trap of, well, this indicator helped me put on this one trade one time, or I think this helps me do, something that's not really quantifiable, but just everything on your chart has a purpose. Everything on your chart helps you do something. And this can help you filter out some of that noise. And then on that patient side of things, maybe let's say on the mental side, there's probably some type of an issue around doing nothing. And maybe you have those associations that if you're not doing something, that you're not working hard, or that if you're not doing something, you're being a bad person, and that you need to be doing something. And it would be nice to start to reframe the way you think about doing nothing as a trader, and to reframe that to where I'm not doing nothing, I'm doing patience. And patience is a very important part of our job as traders. Now, if this over trading is specifically happening after you take losses, like I said in the beginning, maybe you're up very good on the day and then you keep trading, and then as you're in a trade, you start seeing some of that P&L get erased. You don't want to take that trade off. You get a little bit attached to it. Maybe you take a big loss and you start having all of these emotions like, well, I can't, I was up this much. I can't end the day down now. I can't give that much back. I have to get, we've all been there. Something nice to help you find your way through this, and something nice to understand is that our emotions can trump any type of logic that we have. Jared Tendler, when he was on the podcast, he talked about this, and it was a really great conversation if you go back and watch that entire episode. But he talked specifically about this idea that our emotions have the ability to just hijack all of our logic. And there's a point to where we can get so emotionally attached to something that the logical part of our brain essentially just shuts down. And this is going on tilt. And this is where we're in that environment where we just do the craziest things on the screen. And then we sit back later and think, why did I do that? What happened? Almost feeling like you weren't even in control of it. And it wasn't, and that's exactly what happened. You weren't in control of it because you got so emotionally attached to something that all the logical part shut down and you were just running away with your emotions. And part of the human condition is we all have things that we are struggling with. We all have shortcomings. And this would be something to not confuse, but just to be aware of, that we are all susceptible to this. Nothing can be, nobody's immune to this. And the best strategies in the world, the best discipline in the world, all of that will literally go out the window if you're in a position where you tilt too far into those emotions. And so you can know what to do, you can know what's right, you can be a disciplined person, but once you get so tilted on the emotional side, everything else just shuts down and you're off to the races, just doing a bunch of, wily things. So recognizing this as just something, And specifically, if you find that this is a repeatable pattern for you, where if you get up and then you start taking, some losses, then if you lock that in, you might have 1 or 2 trades, you're up really nicely, and then for the rest of the day, you end up putting on 12 trades that you end up down big. Just recognize this is a repeatable type pattern. This is probably a trigger for you. And then if you are up on the day, start thinking through like a process. Not, preferably not when you're actually up on the day, but when you're off the screens. Think about a process to how to fix this so that when you are up, if you are going to keep trading, maybe you reduce size, or maybe if you are up and you take a trade and it turns out to be a loser, you really intentionally step off the screens, take a break, potentially shut down after that. But, be really in tune with the fact of how you're feeling and making sure that you're not going to run off the rails there, because it's something that you'll be susceptible to. All right. Let's talk about one more. And for this one, let's just do micromanaging. Micromanaging trades just in general. Potentially you know what the trade is, how you're supposed to be entering that, but you kind of rush into it, not letting it set up, or you're in a trade and then you just start taking profits at weird places or taking small losses at weird places, and the trade never gets a chance to develop. It never gets a chance to work without you getting in there with some itchy fingers and making all kinds of micromanaging decisions for no reason. Tactically, we could say that this just comes from a process of not being able to have any set process in place. So when you're in an open position, what is the process that you're following? For this trade that you're in, how are you supposed to be managing that thing? If you don't have that already decided, and if you don't have a process in place, you're going to open yourself up to just whatever you're feeling and reacting to whatever in the moment you want to do, which is a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And on the mental side of things, it would just be nice to understand that we as people, we're not just a person. There's like different versions of us. We have different levels of awareness. And this can change throughout the day, and this can change from moment to moment sometimes. And we can think about this like the person that we are when we're calm, we're not having anything at risk, and we're just preparing or we're just analyzing the market, is not the same person that is live in a trade that has capital at risk. In a way, these are very different people, even though it's just us. And what we don't want to do is let that person that's in the trade, that version of us, we don't want him to have to think a lot and to make a lot of decisions, because that person is not very good at making decisions. He's not a good thinker. The version of us that's calm and collected and not in fight or flight mode, that person is good at making decisions. So we want to create these processes, have these things settled ahead of time. And then again, be aware that if you're out there and you find yourself micromanaging trades all the time, you don't have a process set up, you're just letting that happen in the moment, you're trusting that version of yourself that should not be trusted to make a lot of decisions that person should just not be making. Yeah. These are some inches, some very common inches. And this video is potentially not so much geared towards somebody that's just beginning in our trading. As I said at the beginning, when we first start trading, there's just so many things that are being thrown at us that we have to get filtered, we have to get sorted through, and a lot of trial and error and a lot of ups and downs. But then once we start getting a bit more dialed in, that's where this, very quickly we can run into these things that might seem like big issues, but they're really not. They're not overly complicated. They're from the outside probably very obvious, and a lot of times the solution is incredibly simple. But we just have to get in there and be able to do it. And as I'm talking through this list, there's a good chance that you probably related with some of these or all of these on the short list. And maybe it is that you've identified, I get what you're saying, Korbs, and I understand this, but, as you're talking through this, I can think of a different inch, that I'm struggling with. But what I would encourage everybody for listening to this video is just to spend some time really facing the pain of identifying the inch that is holding you back. And it is very painful, because when you want to start confronting these things, if you want to get serious and really look at what's going on and just face it, it is painful. And the reason it's painful is because it will force you to just look right at things you are bad at, things you're not, things you don't know, skills that you don't have, shortcomings. And these are difficult and these are very painful things to just face and to try and deal with them. It's much easier to just distract ourselves with social media or with food or with something else. But the progress that we need to make in our trading, it requires us that we build up some of that courage and we have the ability just to face that pain to look at these situations. And the alternative, like I said at the, when I was talking about a personal story, is they just keep happening for time and time and time and time and time and time again, and they never fix themselves. And once you face them, once you accurately, just clearly identify what they are, there's a path forward, and it's beautiful, and it's part of the journey. And as we're figuring this out for ourselves, it would be very important not to confuse the symptom for the actual disease here. When you're, looking at your trading, there's surface things, and then there's the root cause or the real thing that's going on. And the idea that you're cutting winners short, that's not the actual disease. That is a symptom. There's something else there, and we can't fix the symptoms. We have to be able to fix the disease. And that process there of being able to, let's say, accurately just diagnose what is going on, this falls into a realm where I would just say that there are some things in life that are not meant to be explained to you and me. They are meant for you and I to figure out. And because the process of somebody coming in and just maybe telling you exactly what to do, or the process of you facing that pain and figuring out what's going on and identifying what's happening, and then from there being able to move in and work on what needs to be fixed, or at least have the ability to know what direction you need to be looking for help in, that process is just as rewarding as fixing the actual issue. From the outside, or before you start doing this, it might not feel that way and it might not be believable, but it's true. Because that level of growth it takes to, again, do that process, just have the awareness that there's something going on in my life that I don't need somebody outside of me to come in and save me, that I can figure this out. I just need to stop distracting myself. I need to sit down. I need to face what's happening, be honest about what's actually going on, what my shortcomings are, what my issues are, and then figure out what is the path forward. Is this something I can do on my own? Is it just some knowledge I'm lacking? Is it something that I'm not intuitively jiving with, but a skill I can build? Is it something that I need to reach out and get some accountability, or I need to get, some help in this area? And then making those decisions. This is a process that we repeat, and it can just keep going and going and going. And once you do this, once you find, that kind of inch that's holding you back that you want to fix, it's a process of just continuing it. Yeah. Doing it again and again and again and again, because as soon as you solve that inch, there's going to be another one, and then there's going to be another one, and then there's going to be another one. And that's all it is. Like, it's not meant to be done. It's not meant to be solved. And this is something that is like a different way to just play the game of life and to play the game of our trading. We're not trying to get somewhere. We're not trying to do something. We're just trying to keep growing, trying to keep evolving, trying to keep seeing how far we can push ourselves and see what's next. It's the game of life. It's the game of trading. And if we're not growing, we're dying. And so let's keep growing. Yeah. Listen, at some level, we are all in this together. So if you're going to be on the screens between now and the next time that I see you, as always, happy trading out there. Don't do anything crazy, and good luck.